Welcome to the new episode of All That Jazz. I have with me my friend Jeremy Garrett. Welcome to the podcast.
Howdy.
Howdy. So, we have something in common, which is our teacher and David Hawkins, and I always love to bring people on that talk about Hawkins and know his work. And let's start with the beginning. So, how did you initially find Dr. Hawkins' work?
I guess I went through a period of being an agnostic for a while. And just the kind of common, you have that Western definition of kind of a sometimes judging God up above you, separate from you, but you need to earn his love. And that didn't resonate. So I thought that was a bunch of hook'em, and I hadn't heard anything better. Ironically, somehow I forgot that I used to talk to my guides, and they even saved my life. And I just put that all to the side and decided.
Let's go there. Let's go there. That's interesting. 'Cause I don't think I've ever had. I thought at times that maybe I'm getting some messages, but I was never sure. So, what happened basically?
Well, I'm the same as you as an adult because I stuffed it pretty good. I mean, I think I have intuition like most people, but that direct connection, I stuffed pretty good. So I don't know. They just used to kind of just tell me little things and guide me, and I do. And I imagine a lot of us had this because just like I could forget it, I think a lot of us do. And we're just, I think we just tend to be more open then. But it kind of was helpful in the sense that it gave me an outside perspective. Like, it's not like I wasn't affected by the challenges in my life, but at least I felt a little bit more kind of observing it. So that was helpful. The one time they really saved my life, but it was kind of a fun story. My mom had just gotten this new Super Beetle, Volkswagen Super Beetle, back in the day, obviously. And we're driving along, and I'm sitting in the back, and I'm just like 2 years old, but they didn't have like high seats back then. they didn't use all that stuff. So I'm sitting in the back, and I'm playing with the door handle, and my mom keeps saying, "Stop it, Jeremy, stop it." And I'm thinking, I can't. It's just going to happen. There's nothing I can do about it. And so she turns, we're on an arterial, and she turns off the arterial across oncoming traffic. So it's like a 35-mile-an-hour road, but she's not going very fast because she's turning. And then I open the door and I fall out into oncoming traffic. But you're at 2 years old, you're pretty pliable. It was no big deal. But I was about to get up. I was about to sit up, and then my guide said, "Lie still," and it showed me a picture of a truck driving over top of me.
Oh, wow.
And I was literally just about to sit up, and it would have just, and I still felt fear. Like, I was like, okay, I hope you're right.
Okay.
And I lied still, and it went over top of me. And then it, kind of screeched to stop. My mom come running out. And, but yeah, there were, and then sometimes it would just give you a sense of everything's going to be okay. But, I still have my own fears to go through. So there were things that challenged that. And then I think, ultimately it's like we have to kind of I don't know, we have to, but I guess I needed to let go of that and then kind of find it again.
Right. Was it so most of these events with guides happen when you're probably like really, really young? It sounds like 2 years old. Was it like a big truck that had a load in the back? Or how was it? No. Or was it like a smaller one?
It was a bigger truck.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Yeah, I could feel the air.
It was like the one that's super long, like the ones that are super long?
Kind of medium long, but
okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. And So I think about in my 3-year-olds, that's where I started I got this sense wrongly that, I don't know that God's got my back. I got to take care of myself.
At 3?
Yeah, there was
Wow.
a few events that happened that was like, I don't know. It's weird because when I look at the events, God was there, God was totally there. But, the mind and your own fears and whatever come up, and you start to doubt. But, here I am somehow.
Yeah, maybe it was good in a sense that you weren't as you were more careful and not as reckless. So in a sense, not to give away the gift of life. So you have to be, I guess that's the use of fear, not to, not to go close to the edge, or, not to play around with things that could be really dangerous.
Yeah, and maybe even just appreciate that gift that, that God is always there, that God's messengers are always there, and we are always safe. And that's so at 3, kind of right before 4 is when I think I started to let that go, but maybe not completely. But at 4, I had a premonition that I wouldn't kind of like start to see who I was until I was 23.
Wow.
And I remember feeling like that was like holding my breath. Like that seemed like such a, 4 years old, 23 seems like a very long time.
Wow.
And so along the way, like I did have periods up until maybe 8 where I prayed and I felt a connection that way. And I prayed for people. My sister taught me that. And my grandma was very, very intuitive. My grandma and my aunt were very intuitive. And so I always had that around me. So yeah, I don't know. I still think it's weird how I can how you can disassociate for something to have a different experience and completely forget it, or almost forget it.
Did that turn out to be true then? Did you at 23 then start to see life differently?
Yeah, so at 23, I was engaged to be married, which was crazy because I really didn't know who I was. I mean, like I was really searching, and I was really like, I have no clue, I went in the Air Force because I did good in school, but there was a lot of craziness and chaos. And I had moved to my grandparents for my senior year, and I just needed time to figure things out. So I decided I kind of didn't really want to go, but it just felt like a good option to give me some grounding and routine. And so I did that, and I got out.
What did you do, by the way, in the Air Force?
Aircraft structural maintenance. So it was like
you
the
didn't get to
structure of
fly.
the plane. Yeah, the structure of the plane, and then we also did painting aircraft.
Did you ever fly with those F-16s or whatever? No, didn't get to.
No, I got a comp. I suppose that I won this simulator flight with a pilot, and I sat there for 3 hours waiting for 2.5 hours waiting for him. He never came. So then I was like, okay. And then I got to fly in a C-131 and a practice thing, but they had me all wrapped up in a blanket, so like I couldn't see anything.
Oh wow, that's so fun.
But it was a good experience because boy, I just had to deal with a lot of different people and a lot of different ways. And so it had me confront some things in myself and to learn to accept other people. And yeah, at first it was like a round peg in a square hole.
Did you learn discipline? Sorry.
Yeah, and I started, like, it's funny, our base did these hydraulic tubes for all these jet planes for all these other bases. And it was like a contract, and I was really good at it. And we had like a 2-year backlog, and I was just like, and I really loved it because I didn't have any responsibility. I didn't have to do anything. And then all of a sudden they kind of realized, I did pretty good work and I was a dependable guy. And so they stuck me on the flight line truck, and all of a sudden I had responsibility. And so, no, but that was good for me too. But so I got out, met this gal, and I thought, well, she's pretty and she likes me and she treats me good. Like, what else am I looking for?
Right.
And then I started working for this Sikh guy. He was an American who became a Sikh. Hey, Noah.
And that's your dog, Noah. Nice name for a dog.
Yeah, he's all excited because he just went outside.
Right.
So he kind of read me like a book, and he seemed to know me better than I knew myself, which wasn't much of an accomplishment, but still it really piqued my interest. And he started getting me to ask questions about, being married and had I gone through the steps and all of that. And so kind of saved me from that. But it got me interested in meditation.
What kind of steps? Well, what kind of step are you referring to?
Well, I just jumped in. This was like maybe 6 months and we're getting married.
Wait, so how long did you know her?
Yeah, like 6 months.
Oh, wow. Okay, well, but I know there's stories of people just meeting and then like 2 weeks later they're like, yeah, let's just get married, and then it works out. I'm like, how is that possible?
Sometimes, yeah, sometimes.
Right.
But yeah, so there was an event where, so he was an intense guy, like really intense. Like he used to live out in the woods of Alaska and only see people small groups for 6 months of the year. Like he was a recluse kind of.
Right.
But he got into Sikhism somehow, and it brought him back into the world. And he started a business. He married a gal who was a teacher at the local naturopathic school. He got a house, and I remember thinking like that, wow, because I could see under the surface there was still that kind of warrior and loner, and yet through meditation he'd kind of reintegrated himself in the world. And there was an event where we were lifting this big piece of stone, and it was a finished piece of stone, so we'd done a lot of work on it, and each piece is a couple $1,000, a few $1,000. And we were bringing it into the shop, and he hadn't set up the stands to stick it on. So I had to let go with one hand and try to reach over and pull the stand over, and it fell and the piece broke. And I remember thinking, oh shit, that warrior that is going to come out.
Right.
And I saw it bubbling up in him. And he just stopped, and he didn't say anything, and he turned around and he went outside and went into the house
to meditate.
And he came back like a half an hour later, and it was gone. And I was thinking, wow, that's pretty good. Lucky me.
So literally he didn't say anything. He just went inside and presumably to meditate, and then he came back and he was all good.
Yeah. And honestly, in fairness, he hadn't completely let it go, but he had for the moment. And ironically, so the next day we're working on a piece, and it was this weird thing. Like I saw him literally self-sabotage and break another piece. And it was like, he was mad at himself about the whole situation. And so I can't explain it totally, but anyways. So it got me interested in meditation. And so I went looking for groups that, did meditation. And I had this idea, like I was just excited about everything, like, wow, now I can believe in God again because, it's less a linear concept and it makes more sense. And then I got inspired, the metaphysical circuits, like, oh, there's all these things to explore and cool things and psychics and, this group and that group.
Did you go into the Sikh route, or did you go just meditation in general?
No, that didn't resonate with me. Like
Okay.
in my mind, it seemed like it should be normal and the people should be normal. And I didn't really jive with the headbands.
Oh yeah, did he have that on all the time, like at work and stuff? I
Yeah.
think it's kind of cool. I knew this coworker in Canada. He had but he didn't have that on at all. And but he was Sikh, and I remember him trying to, like, we didn't talk much, but when we were working, we were friendly, and he tried to help me, like, give me advice if I wanted to stay in Canada. And if I had listened to him, I would probably still be in Canada now, but I didn't listen to him. He was a really good guy. And yeah, wow. Like that's my only person. That's the only person that I knew personally that was Sikh, and that was really good, like, experience.
I do like the Sikhs. I did like them. And the teaching seems pretty legit. I mean, I didn't know a lot about it, but what I saw of it, and they seem to be, yeah, very solid and um, dedicated.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, obviously it probably varies, but yeah, no, I thought it was cool in a lot of senses, but I was looking for something that was normal.
Right.
And I think partly just growing up with my grandma, you know, she was into Buddhism all the way back in the 50s. And, you know, I read, I can't even think of the books, but she did give me some books that were like spiritual, kind of like there was a series on Zoroaster, but it was kind of a story.
Mm-hmm.
And then I remember I read Dianetics. But, you know, just being around them, I think I just assumed it should be normal. It seemed
Mm-hmm.
normal, but more normal to me. So I looked for groups, and I found this one group, and they had this free meditation week. And I talked to the center leader on the phone, and he seemed like totally normal. He was like the head of the statistics department at the UW. And so we ended up having like all these intellectuals in our meditation center because of him, probably. And they were all really nice. Like it was a sort of a family. But I so started meditating, and then I started having some spiritual experiences. And, you know, like that was like, wow, you know, because my whole life I'm looking around, I don't get it. I don't understand what motivates people. I don't know where I fit in. And like I hear this, and one thing I had done when I denied God is I kind of made that connection with the feminine into God in my mind. And I was like, you know, I also was gonna make, you know, my childhood, which was a little challenging on the outside, at least. I was gonna be the good father. And so I made it into that. And ironically, so I hopefully not too much information, but the first person I had sex with, and the third time I had this experience of being a dot going out into infinity. And
A dot.
just like a speck
Wow.
going out into infinity.
Okay.
And I remember thinking at the time, like, wow, this is really cool. And I was elated, but I was also depressed at the same time, because I thought, like, that's it. What do I do now? Like, from the context I was holding it in, I didn't know where to go with that. And I'm like, I feel like that's it. Like, I don't know what else to do.
So it was like,
God.
so it was like, so the satisfaction was not there because it was pointing you to something more that's you're just a small speck of.
Yeah, it pointed me to something more, but I was holding in the context of that connection. And so it felt limited. And so when I was meditating one time, I had the same experience, and I didn't relate it at the time. And I was meditating, and we were doing open eye meditation. And then my eyes started doing the kind of REM sleep thing. So it brought me back. And I didn't think a lot of it. I thought, wow, that was cool.
Oh, there he is, Noah.
You can't be denied. So I sat there for a little while, and everybody left the meditation room, and then they were outside. We'd have prasad, like, you know, blessed food afterwards. And I stepped through the doorway, And it was like my first ever kind of metaphysical experience, at least that I could remember. And it just felt like everything was love, you know, and as Doc talks about, as a state of existence, like not like our human love, but
right.
just that everything was created by love, in love. And I could feel it in waves coming off the walls. It was like, I literally stuck my hand out like I could touch it. And I'm looking at the wall and the girl over there, and I'm like, it's all animated by the same thing. And my friend Jagrita came over and started talking with me. And it's like, I wasn't paying attention to anything, but I could take in everything he was saying without paying attention to it. And 2 other conversations at the same time, because like the mind was just still. And I remember I had read about Ramakrishna, the thought of Ramakrishna came into my mind. And when he was in ecstatic state once, he took his long hair and he cleaned this poor person's dirty living space. Mm-hmm. And I remember thinking, like, I get it intellectually, but that's kind of weird. So in that state of experiencing that love, then I was like, wow, that totally makes sense, because there is no like clean or dirty or right or wrong or good or bad, or like none of it. It's all just a thought. It's all just a thought.
You were on a natural high. Like I had a guest previously, I think, and she said that the high on meditation was a lot better than the high on drugs. And it sounds like this is in your case also true. Did you ever do any drugs? You ever do DMT?
No, I tried a few things just out of curiosity and even honestly as a doc student, but I felt safe by it because I just wanted to know what it was about. And I think I did it in a reasonable way. But yeah, so like that sexual experience and then drugs, it gives you a glimpse, but it feels limited. And when you have it, like when it happens of its own, it feels unlimited. Kind of like music. Now, people amaze me with music and their creativity and how far they can go, but to the mind, I think it does seem somewhat limited. And then like one time I feel like I experienced like the heavenly angelic choir or something they talk about.
Wow.
And that was the thing. It was like, it was infinite. The songs, the tones, it was like infinite.
Could you compare it to anything that you heard here on Earth? Any song or any band or any choir?
I think not necessarily I think moments for sure where like the songs here don't necessarily have, it's just the infinite evolvement, but they have that silence. That's that kind of infinite silence, some of them, right? You know, that kind of bring you tears or goosebumps.
Like Arvo Part's Spiegel, like, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I used to play that song, and for Alina, I used to play those 2 songs in a loop. So that's a classic.
And that's what Doc says, right? You know, if the song puts you in that state, keep playing it and keep playing it forever. I had a friend who used to do that with Kiri.
Okay, Kriya? Was it Kriya by
Kiri.
Robert Gass? Kiri,
yeah.
Kiri. Okay.
I think it's Kiri. Yeah, by Robert Gass.
So how did you then, so you started meditation and you have starting to have experiences and all that. And then somewhere, I'm guessing that somewhere along the line, somebody recommends Doc, or you find a book.
Yeah. So I just come from being an agnostic and maybe even an atheist, or thinking I was. But the irony of it is you still are, when you're happy, you're still happy, grateful to God, and when you're sad, you're still mad at God, even though you don't believe in God. Like, you can't get around it. Because there's always this sense of something, well, it's not really outside yourself, but you know, we kind of very often experience it that way, that is there. And yeah, so, but I didn't have any context, and it's not like I had all these, I had some cool experiences. I had the experiences I needed to inspire me, let's say. And at the time I'm meditating with this group, and they're telling me, oh, this guru here in the group, the great guru, he's enlightened, and he's an avatar and all this stuff. And I'm like, okay. I mean, he seems like an okay guy. And, you start kind of, and he did have some nice works, and somebody actually randomly, he came up in some of the calibrations, and supposedly, and it kind of makes sense that at one point he was at 585, and then he fell to 160.
Oh, can you tell me who that person was, or?
Sri Chinmoy.
Oh, was that the Aurobindo disciple? Yeah. All right, got it.
He was the secretary of the secretary. And then he came. And I think he was very sincere at first. Like, you see pictures of him when he first came, that, somebody brought him over to New York, and he did seem kind of innocent. He meditated a lot, and, but, then he got caught up in all the power and what have you.
Temptations. He fell.
What's interesting is I had a sense at the end before I left that I don't know if he completely did, but I had this sense he recognized he made a mistake, and he was trying to correct it, but I don't think he did. I think he was.
That's the thing that scares me. And that's why I really like in the Oprah interview, especially, Doc said to master the world before you transcend it, because I think, and this is just my opinion, that some people, some of the basic stuff is not totally conquered yet. So then they reach a high state, and then that chink in the armor that's there gets somehow penetrated, and boom, everything falls down. And I don't know if that's true with everybody. Obviously, anybody can fall for temptations. That's another thing as well. But I think having the basics covered is also huge.
Yeah, and I think you can also say that it's not necessarily wrong that they fell either. I mean, Doc says 3 or 4 lifetimes, and it usually takes 3 or 4 lifetimes to come back. So maybe that's just the way that was just their path, in a sense. Not that we want to, consciously do that, but
right.
It definitely seems to happen quite a lot.
Mm.
I do have a cool experience to relate as far as falling and coming back, and I might have shared this before, but I remember I was never into Deepak Chopra per se, but I remember seeing a video, and I thought, oh, he seems like a nice guy. He seems like a good person. And then I went to a lecture, and then they calibrated him, and he was at 505, I think, or something like that, or just over 500. And I thought, oh, okay. And then a little while later, I saw another video of him, and I said, oh, something seems wrong. He seems off. He seems in his ego. And went to Sedona again, and that lecture, they calibrated him again. They calibrated that he fell to 160. I mean, he fell to 160 also. But
was it on the slides, or was it just Doc talking about him?
I think he was talking about it, because I don't think it was, being, especially that it changed. I recall it as him talking about it, and maybe even testing it. And then a little while later, I saw another video, and I said, oh, wow, he seems like he's doing better now. And I went back to Sedona, and it came up again that he had recovered, and that he was the only person that they had tested that had fallen and come back in this lifetime.
Wow.
And I can't say, he stayed there. Hopefully he did. But
he probably didn't go back to the 500s. It's probably a lower level.
No, he went back to the 500s.
Really?
Yeah.
Because when was the, I don't know where I heard it, but somebody, no, I think it was Doc that kind of said, but I didn't hear himself say that. I think this is secondhand, but somebody said that Doc referred to him as Deep Pockets Chopra.
I don't know.
so I was like, from then on, I was like, okay, maybe this guy's not safe at all. You know.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know, but I thought that was it. You know, it was good for me to see that, I seemingly saw that, and that the test seemed to coincide with that. It gave me confidence in the test. I mean, I think I already did, but then on top of that, at Doc's last lecture, I was standing in line and I started talking to this guy, and I remember thinking he seemed a little odd to be here. You know what I mean? He didn't necessarily seem like a doc student.
Mm.
So I asked him how he ended up coming to be here. And he said, oh, I give talks on the circuit with Deepak. And he told me I should come here. Isn't that wild?
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Let's go back to first how you found. We're skipping around a little bit, but it's good. How you found actually Doc.
Okay, so I joined that group, but to join that group, you had to be a monk. I mean,
like Chimoy's group had had an official thing. You had to become a monk, and okay.
Yeah, and I'm like just turning 24. I'm like, fuck, I don't want to do this, but I didn't have any context, and I thought, well, I had the experience when I started meditating with this group, and then talking about this great teacher, and I can't lose this opportunity. But no, I didn't want to do it. Like I remember seeing a psychic once, and he was psychic, and she was she told me that no, okay, this was a healer I went to. Sorry, I didn't go to a lot of this stuff, but I did go to a couple. And this healer, he was really good until at the start, when I started going to him, he had just started doing it, and he was very sincere and very humble. And then a few years later, I watched him change because he wrote a book and all this stuff. But he told me I had a peaceful soul, but that I hadn't chosen a very peaceful body, and that was kind of odd. And that my soul oddly wasn't pushing the matter. And so I don't think I was ever like another psychic told me, like, if you don't exercise, you'll pop. So I've never been the type like to just like I don't fit the MO of being a monk necessarily. I don't think, like I played sports, and I played rugby and road crew and soccer and I don't know. Anyways, but I did it because I felt like, God, I can't miss this opportunity, and like, getting a glimpse of real love, like, you can't get that in the world. So I did that, and then about 5 years in, I did this peace torch. We had this worldwide peace torch relay.
Wait. So you actually went into the order?
Yeah.
I thought, okay. Wow.
Yeah, for 8 years.
Wow.
And it took me 8 years to figure out I didn't need to do it that way. But about 5 years in, I did this. I went to Brazil to join this peace torch relay. We had this worldwide peace torch relay, and our meditation centers in Brazil were putting on their first one. So they asked for people outside to come help. And so I came, this guy from New York who, was around Sri Chinmoy, this gal from Italy, and this guy from Australia, and his parents were Portuguese, so he spoke Portuguese. But it was really cool because I was the only one who, they could all get by because they knew Spanish, or Italian was similar, or the guy knew Portuguese, and I didn't know anything. So it's just like a little kid. And I just let go of everything, and, go here, go there, go to, and it was a magical experience. Like, it really was. Then the events they put on, like, it just got bigger and bigger and bigger. And the last event, the first day we ran up to this top outside of Sao Paulo to this little city, and there was like 2,000 people, and the mayor was there. And then the next day we went to it was the second biggest church in the world, and they had printed all these quotes from our teacher and put them on banners, and we ran through the banners, and there was 4,000 people in the church. And we went to this town, and it was like lined for 2 kilometers with kids in white with peace doves, and then they all like came in behind us as we ran through to this. And then at the end, we were at the Stadium Americano, and we had this 800-meter gold medalist, and he took the peace torch and ran it around and lit the cauldron and lit off the birds. But anyways, it was a super cool experience. But there was a gal there. There's always a gal.
Let me guess. She was the reason you left it. She was the reason you.
But not directly. I mean, not in a sense directly. Okay. So the minute she was talking with the guy from New York, and they were talking about, like how can boys and girls who are being men and women who are being monks, work together without, with being careful. And I remember thinking, I have no business going over there, but I can't help but go over there. And so I went over there and I sat down next to them, and she just, looked straight in my eyes and said, "You're Jeremy from Seattle, right?" And I was like, "Oh shit, I'm in trouble."
She recognized you. She was from Seattle.
No, she was the senator from Sao Paulo.
Okay.
But she knew I was coming, so she knew who I was.
Okay.
And but it was just the way she said it and the way she looked directly in my eyes, even though they talked about not looking directly in people's eyes. And then it was like she knew me. It was like she knew me in and out, and this peace came up over me. Like, I don't have to like explain myself. I don't have to try to be anything. Like she knows me inside and out. And I'm like, but I'm a monk. Like, what the fuck?
Exactly.
And so anyways, I had a little crush on her, and I would see her in New York. And one day we were having a celebration. It was celebration for the day Sri Chinmoy came to America. And everybody's dressed in white. And we had this cool it's in Queens, New York. And they'd gotten from the city somehow this little rectangular area that they used to back trolleys into. And somehow they got it from the city, and we created this like little stands and a tennis court. We hold all our functions there. And so it was actually pretty beautiful. Everybody's in white, and everybody's praying and meditating and singing, and everybody was going past for a blessing. And she comes down, everyone's in white, and she's in this bright red jacket.
Oh, like the woman in the Matrix, the temptation.
Yeah. So, and I remember I had this thought like, she looks like an angel. It wasn't absolutely 100% pure, but it was pretty pure. And I felt this whoosh, and I looked down, and Sri Chinmoy is looking right at me, and I hear this voice, "She's mine." I'm like, what the hell? Like, I didn't think it was that bad of a thought. Like, I thought it was reasonably pure.
Wait, you hear? I didn't thought that it was from him, or was she just like your thought?
No, from him. I felt this just whoosh of energy. I turned my head. He's staring at me, and I hear this voice say, "She's mine." And I'm like, whoa. And at the time, I didn't understand that he had abused his power with women. I thought maybe he was calling me out because I wasn't being pure, and here we are meditating, and I'm fixated on this girl.
Right. Little did you know that he was doing everything on the side and more.
And telling us not to. Oh boy.
All right.
So anyways, she ended up leaving. I was curious about her, so I looked her up, and she had written a testimony that she felt she was being groomed, and so then I left, and shortly after.
So wait, she wrote a testimony that you were kind of being abused, basically.
That she felt that he was abusing women sexually, and that she was being groomed for that. She felt like she was being groomed.
I see. Which she probably was, right?
Yeah. And so I left, and a lot of people got really hurt because they really bought into it. And I had a bit of protection because I felt like I was doing it for the right reasons, and I just didn't know any better. But it put the thought in my head, because I loved reading books on Ramakrishna and Ramana Maharshi and stuff. I loved reading the books of the saints, and so it put in my head the idea of having a teacher. And so the thought came to me, wow, that would be cool to have a real teacher. But I also thought, wow, what is the likelihood of that? So by
So by then you kind of realize that Shimoni is not the real teacher.
Oh yeah, yeah. I just left. And so I just set that to the side because I thought the likelihood of finding one, wasn't that likely. But then I was visiting my grandparents, and we went to a metaphysical bookstore. It's kind of crazy. It's this gal from Brooklyn, and it's in this little kind of tourist town in Olympic Peninsula of Washington. Cool little town. And she's got this really big metaphysical bookstore. Like, it's kind of random, right? It's good. But anyways, I went in there. We were looking at books, and Power versus Force, it like stood out. And I opened right to the snowbank experience. And I was like, I hadn't necessarily had that experience, but I'd had enough experience to know that that was legit. That was the real deal. He wasn't talking about it. He'd experienced it. So it really grabbed me. And so I got the book, and then there's a metaphysical bookstore here. And so I got Eye of the Eye, and then, later all the books. But I remember just this feeling like I don't have to search anymore. Like it's this is all I need. I don't need to play the game anymore. And then he was coming to Seattle in 2005, and I hadn't totally put together like, wow, here's this great work, and there's the teacher who wrote it. I'd asked for, thinking, wow, it'd be great to have a real teacher, but I hadn't put it. I don't know how to. Just hadn't totally put it together. So he was coming to Seattle, and at the time I didn't have like a ton of money, and it was like $75. So I was like, should I spend the money and go see him? And I didn't do it. And then he came, and this feeling inside of me was like, you dummy. So I immediately went online, and I looked up the lectures, and I immediately bought a ticket for the upcoming lecture. And then I, went and saw Doc.
Amazing. I wanted first to go back, and because I remember years ago, I saw some people breaking world records because I think they were disciples of Chimoni. Like, what's about that? Like, did he want to become like well known, as that's why he groomed his or inspired, let's say, his disciples to make world records? Was it that?
Yeah, he totally got into like hobnobbing and being associated with, like major figures. I don't know what his trip about that was, but yeah, it was. So I lived with this guy Agraha, who was his main secretary, and he would live in New York kind of half the year and Seattle half the year. But I ended up kind of being his secretary because guy's crazy. Like, he slept 2-3 hours a night, and he was either working or setting up meetings and stuff for Sri Chinmoy. Like, the guy was pretty.
Right.
But like, there was so much paperwork. There was just piles of correspondence and this and that and the other. And so I got a kind of glimpse into it. And like, he corresponded with Mother Teresa, Nelson Mandela, Gorbachev, like all these people. And so yeah, it was kind of crazy. It was just a big thing to be able to associate with these people. And yeah, he had like the Sri Chinmoy kind of worldwide running team thing. So we'd put on running races, and there was one that was 3,200 miles long, and then at celebrations they would have a 24-hour race. Let's see. No, they had a 120-mile race, and they'd have a 12-hour walk. And which is surprisingly more difficult than you might imagine. One time I did the 12-hour walk, and you're trying to go as fast as you can, and transcend, right? And so by the eighth hour, I was so swollen from edema that these old ladies were passing me, and I was like, okay, I think I need to let this go.
So it was presented in a like a spiritual context. You're trying to break the record for your teacher, basically.
Not necessarily break the record, but transcend your limits.
All right. Okay.
Some of them would take it like that, because there was this one guy who had the Guinness Book of World Records for the most world records.
Right. I think that's the guy I saw on YouTube years ago, and I thought, what's the connection with Chinmoy and why are his disciples breaking so many records? I was always curious about that. So now it kind of makes sense.
Yeah, it was the sort of thing to like please the teacher. That guy was intense too, really intense.
When did he die, by the way?
What's that?
Chinmoy, when did he die? Like 2000, doesn't matter.
Yeah. I can't remember exactly.
Yeah, like okay, let's go to the positive one. So you go to the lecture, you go to the first doc lecture, which was probably in Sedona, right?
Yeah.
And what was the experience of that, first seeing Doc and all that?
Honestly, there was a lot of layers. On one hand, actually being a student of Sri Chinmoy and reading about other spiritual teachers and yogis and stuff, I definitely had some context, and I had some context through experience, but there's also still a lot of, like, sometimes I'd just fall asleep. Like, I think maybe it was just like, that was the way I could take it in. I appreciate it. It was like when you're going to go get in a bathtub as a kid, and you're kind of like, you're kind of resistant, and you get in and you're like, okay, yeah, this is good. So there was some of that, and I didn't, I still had an issue with like my own issue of just feeling part of the group, and I had an issue with groups. I had a sense, I think, from past lifetimes and just seeing people of how they act in groups, and so I don't know, I had an unreasonable and it was weird because later on I finally one of the last times I went to, it was after sadly it was after Doc died, and I went to one of the June gatherings, and I remember being kind of nervous about doing things, and you go to the picnics, and I always feel a little awkward, and so I prayed for God to guide me. And then I pull into the Whole Foods parking lot in Sedona just as I arrive, and I'm forgetting his name right now. But anyways, a doc student walks up and he goes, "Hey, I think I know you on Facebook." And then he goes on to explain what everything that's happening, where it's happening, when it's happening. And when I had gone to the lectures before, I had just gone to the lecture. I didn't know there was like all these other things, and they were going to the Unity Church, and they had a doc meeting and gatherings and stuff like that. But no, I just knew, like, this is my teacher. I felt grateful to be there. I had one time I had a cool experience. I went to see Doc, and I stopped off in Scottsdale on the way, and I left my wallet at a store, and I got up to Sedona. I didn't have any money, so I couldn't get the hotel I'd reserved. So I went to the church, and I was going to sleep in the parking lot, but it was pretty cold that night. And the groundskeeper came out and said, "Hey, do you need a pillow and a blanket?" And I was like, "Oh, this is great." And then it was crazy. Like, I remember like 2:00 in the morning, somebody came to get in line. I remember thinking, that's nuts.
For the lecture with a cane.
Yeah.
Oh, was this like the last lecture?
No, this was still at the Schnebley Hill Road, the spiritual center there.
Okay.
And so I slept there during the night, and then I got in line, and I'm standing there, and I didn't have any money for water or food or anything. So there was this German couple in front of me, and they said, "Oh, hey, do you want a water?" And I said, "Sure, thanks." And they said, "Yeah, we brought an extra. We thought someone was going to need one." Oh. And then at lunchtime, they said, "Hey, do you want to go to lunch with us, we made extra food. We thought somebody would need some, and then they said, oh, here's $20 for gas so you can get back to your wallet.
Wow. Did you ever find your wallet then?
Yeah, I did.
Wow. People don't understand it. There was an amazing kindness and love, and also something that started to happen, especially as the lectures got bigger towards the end, is sometimes people would start singing along. I think there was I think the last lecture, if I'm not mistaken, was there a bagpiper that came on stage?
I don't think the last one, maybe.
Or maybe they
I was that one where the bagpipes came in for his birthday and everybody was crying. Or it seemed like most people were
right,
crying.
and there was I think there was a bagpipes, or they were playing to the speakers the Amazing Grace, and then spontaneously the crowd starts singing Amazing Grace, and it was just amazing, like goosebumps, just amazing experience. Yeah, and but Doc is one of those. It's a really interesting teacher, because you have the calibration part, and then you have the calibration of worldly stuff and all that, and I think a lot of people unfortunately get turned off from Dr. Hawkins because they do not agree with the politics. They're like, oh, Doc is I heard that recently a student said that, yeah, my dad, he's not into it anymore because he thinks Doc is a Republican,
That's a tough one, right?
Yeah,
Because most spiritual people are like it would kind of theoretically make sense. It's not one or the other, but it would theoretically make sense. Okay, the Democrats, their intention is to do all these good things. So of course, they're the ones I want to be with. If you're not necessarily looking at, well, the actual results of the intentions.
right.
I noticed that when Doc's books used to be there was our local metaphysical bookstore, there was a top 10 books, and Power versus Force was always in it. And then Truth versus Falsehood came out, and so the bookstore was run by Yogananda Center. And so when Truth versus Falsehood came out, it was immediately not on the top 10 list anymore, and they didn't carry the Truth versus Falsehood, but they did carry a few of his other books because they thought, they saw Yogananda as kind of up there with Jesus, and he was calibrated at 540.
Oh, right.
So, and I went to a lecture once in Phoenix. It was the Hay House lectures.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a gal sitting next to me, and I had this sense that she was fighting in her mind the sense she had of Doc versus the calibrations. That was like my intuition. And I could feel it inside of her. She's kind of fighting being there. And then at one point, you could just feel she kind of loses it. She just gets up and goes. And then 10 minutes later, she came back, and I just felt like, okay, I'm going to do this.
I'm gonna listen despite the fact that it's painful to listen to some of the things. I think that was the Celebrate Your Life Phoenix 2010, if I'm not mistaken, because there is audio of that, or there's the different one.
You know better than me.
Okay.
Actually, that one was interesting because he calibrated the audience at 325, and normally the audience is maybe 425 to 450, which I thought odd, because at the time the U.S. was supposedly at that level, and so it seemed odd to me. God, we're not any better than the average U.S., but in fairness, I think that's the populace with the Constitution and the Bill of Rights and everything kind of lifting up the level. But I remember thinking, geez, we got to work a little harder here. Even I love.
But I remember it was interesting that during the lectures, then I think he only did that in 2002. He at the end he'd always calibrate the level before and after, or I think or after. I don't know. Yeah, he calibrated both before and after at the end of the lecture, and he always got like 5 or 10 points higher for the whole group, which means that most people probably didn't move, but then somebody probably made a big jump or something.
Yeah, yeah, because there was the one lecture he said somebody. I wasn't at the lecture. I think it happened, but he mentioned that somebody had jumped from 350 to the 500s.
Wow.
Yeah, like that'd be pretty cool. Just skip the intellect. but yeah, that the calibrations. I mean, even coming up in dog groups, sometimes that's yeah,
that's a biggie. Okay, we got to talk about this. Obama.
I don't know why that one's such a big deal.
It is because any of these kind of things are controversial because okay, the way I have never heard him say that himself, but I heard somebody say that he referred to him as a puppy dog, and she took that as meaning that maybe he's in the mid 200s because family dog is I think 250 if I'm not mistaken. So I always thought it was that he was about that level 200s, and your recollection is different.
Yeah, so I've always been a bit into politics, and I was raised conservative. Not in any kind of big way, but it just kind of was. And so I was interested in it. So at the lecture, when he was talking about it, it was before the 2008 election. And so, it was just interesting to me. And that's why I remember, why it stood out. And he talked about Obama being at the level of love. He talked about McCain being at like 425 or something like 426. But he made the point that you can't just consider, for a president, you can't just consider their own level of consciousness. You have to consider the level of consciousness of the programming they've been programmed with, and you have to consider the consciousness of the people around them. If you look at Obama, he had kind of leftist Marxist influences through his mother, through Bill Ayers, through all these different people, through school probably. And he had a certain perception of the world. But I never had a problem with that because I look at Obama and he seems like a loving guy. He seems like a nice guy. Now, lately, I feel like he's maybe sold his soul a little bit because I feel like he's not being real self-honest on some things. But
right.
And like at a certain point, you're doing it just because you believe it. But at a certain point, you might have to actually make a decision. Like, am I really going to say this? Am I really going to contradict, something else, or where you lose that innocence? And I kind of felt like maybe that's happening. But and even with Oprah, I felt like both of them got sucked into the kind of polarization.
Yeah. I think it started with her endorsing Obama, and then through the years she became, especially after she finished her Oprah Winfrey show, and the people she probably associate with are all on the left. So it was inevitable. I remember there was an interview that she did, and she said, "These old racists, they just need to die." And I thought, I don't know if this person is so loving anymore. I don't know. Granted, her show was calibrated 510, so that's lovingness, but that's conditional love. So maybe, possible, because I don't know, Eric Hoffer, he's another one that was 505, very passionate man, kind of he would talk, and he would like talk with a book, and he very kind of working class, and you wouldn't assume that's 505, but he was. And but her, it's just, and also I think it's with her, it's she went away from the tradition, meaning that she discounted traditional religion as kind of passe, and that didn't protect her in a way, maybe.
Yeah, and she was like, how do you discern? You know, she's open to so many things and so many people and so many influences. It's like, it's tough. It's amazing that anyone doesn't fall, who has any manner of power, because I remember having a vivid dream when I was a kid, and it showed me how anyone could fall. And of course, it was simple. It was literally just one step at a time, and you don't even realize it. And then all of a sudden, you're like, "Oh shit, I fell."
Like
But
climbing a mountain, let's say, or just going somewhere and then, oh, I took a wrong path.
yeah, you hit a fork in the road, and this one's going down, and you're just curious what that is, and you don't think it's a big deal in the whole scheme of things, and then all of a sudden you realize you're way off course.
I just realized something. Maybe the straight and narrow is the path. It's kind of like you're going up a mountain, but the higher your level of consciousness is, the shorter the path, the narrower the path. So you have less leeway. So if you don't follow it correctly, you're gonna fall either left or right.
Yeah, that's what they say. Like why Mother Teresa suffered so much, because when you when you hold something, when you inverse something at that level, there's so much energy that it really forces the issue, and it can create a lot of suffering. And when she dedicated to serving the poorest among us because of the presence of the Christ, and then she made that mean that if I do that, this presence will return. If I do that, there will be a payoff. That's what Doc said created all her suffering. But it is interesting with people, like I think it's hard for the mind to understand, because you have people like Churchill was at 5'10", and if you really break his life down, he made some bad decisions. He was maybe a little gruff, unapologetic. He might have seemed prideful at times, but sometimes the persona is what it needs to be, based on the conditions. And one time the universe was teaching me a good lesson. I was living in a house share, or it was a new house share. And before I moved in, the landlord, super nice guy, he was kind of artsy, and this was his family home. He'd spent 3 months fixing up. It's really nice, kind of not fancy, but nice, cool home. And it overlooked had a nice view and trees. And he goes, yeah, there's the first gal I rented to, she's into, spiritual stuff and natural food and all this stuff. And I was like, wow, cool, that's great. And I finally meet her, and it ends up she's like taking a medical course. So it's not natural food.
Right.
And then I eventually went to see, like, she mentioned this church she went to, and I happened to be by it. So I went in, and the first thing I saw was an alien in a case and all this weird stuff. So anyways, I think she was one of those people Doc talks about where their energy's been reversed. And he mentioned that 2 to 3% of the population has this, and that they create, like, there's at least 80% of the problems in the world. Mm-hmm. And everything was backwards. Like, every truth was backwards. And I thought it was a lesson. And I had this sense, if I learn the lesson, she'll leave. And so I thought the lesson was, I need to be more and more loving. I need to be able to accept her the way she is. I need to just love her regardless, which is true in a sense. But the way I was perceiving it was, in action, I need to act a certain way. I need to be a certain way. Mm-hmm. And the more I did that, the more it set her off, and the worse she got. I mean, she was the type of person who went to protests all the time, and she was like Doc said, where they show up with a sign, an empty sign, and a marker. What are we protesting?
Right.
And so finally one day, it was 1.5 years, she comes into my room, she said something, and I was in a really impersonal state, and I just kind of let her have it, but very impersonally. And it was just basically a no. And she went like this, she cocked her head, she looked at me with respect for the first time, didn't say anything, walked out. Comes in the next morning, Says, Jeremy, I'm moving out.
She couldn't take it anymore. She couldn't take your abuse. You being too
I
nice. She
know,
couldn't
my
take it
horrible
anymore.
abuse. And then literally, like, she didn't even wait to the end of the month. 3 days later, she was gone. And, you know, the lesson is, you know, love isn't pansyism. It's not a wilting lily. It's not a goody good. Love is whatever somebody needs.
Mm-hmm.
And she needed firmness.
Straight talk at times.
Straight
Yeah,
talk.
she needed straight talk.
Yeah.
That's what, incidentally, I think John McCain used to say that he's doing straight talk. But I think John McCain is another one of those cases. Like, there's a famous skit of George Bush. There's a George Bush and there's an impersonator of George Bush, both on stage, and the impersonator is telling, he's the conscience, and he's saying everything that George Bush can say, and the conscience says, "Yeah, here we have everybody." No, I don't know which one it says it, but it says, "Here we have everybody: Democrats, Republicans, and John McCain." And that kind of turned out to be true, this joke, because obviously years later with Donald Trump, McCain was kind of anti-Trump, but I think that may have come also from the remark that Trump made. Okay, since we're starting with this, okay.
I would say to that, I think he had a certain scrupulosity. Like, on one hand, his love of country, Doc said, was at 700. On the other hand, he was so dedicated to what he saw as principles of truth, the way he saw it, that he sometimes lost context, I think.
Right.
He couldn't get past certain things.
Yeah, now looking back, I don't think he would have been that great of a president, because he seemed to wishy-washy in a way with principles, and kind of seemed middle way is kind of the no way in politics, in a way. If you don't, okay, I'll take that back. I'll just say I wasn't, now looking back, I'm not a big fan of John McCain, despite the great book that he wrote, he wrote a book that Doc referenced about courage, the value of courage and stuff like that. And I thought it was a well-written book.
He did really dedicate it. He was really dedicated. I mean, Doc really, like, I thought it was clear as day. He mentioned Obama being over 500, but he seemed very clear that when you consider all the factors, McCain was the better choice.
Oh, I don't
Even
remember that at
though,
all.
you know, that doesn't mean he's your first choice or your best choice, but considering
I remember, I don't know if this is on video, but I think it was October 2010, before the lecture, and there was Susan Hawkins said that she had a surprise for Doc, and Doc said, "What is Obama coming?" And to paraphrase, he said something like, there's a few things I need to say to him," and this was like, I guess 2 years into his president, about roughly 2 years into his presidency. So I took that as, he probably views some things critically that Obama is doing. And also there was in the campaign, there was a small news station where the anchor asked Joe Biden about the Marxist quote, and she asked if Obama has any connection with that and all that, and Joe Biden just became kind of incredulous, and he was just like, became kind of upset. But
he
Doc
becomes
said,
kind of aggressive when he doesn't like questions.
yeah, becomes aggressive, and really kind of passive aggressive. You could see on his face the way he changed, and Doc was talking about that and how he couldn't handle the truth, basically. So to me, it seemed to imply that Doc was implying that Obama's policies had more to do with Marxism or Marxist leanings than McCain, you know?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And the thing about it too is, it's like Obama I feel like something shifted, because before the election, he said something about like, if I lose, it's not because of my race. But then when he became elected, everything became about race. And I remember feeling this division it was creating. It's like at a certain point, there's a point of diminishing return. And there was a time for that. There was a time to point these things out, but the time had gone by. And you might say that the Black community wasn't where they ideally should be, if there is a should, but the opportunity existed that they could choose that. And as a community, that the community was going to have to make some changes to be able to, because there were some structural changes that weren't meeting up with the groups that were being successful.
Right.
And if this were simply just race, then how could East Indians, who are about as dark as they are, make almost twice as much as whites? Like, it doesn't make any sense. But he really played into that. I felt like it created a lot of division in the country.
Right. And I think America is still paying the price for that, because out of that came Black Lives Matter. I'm not directly blaming Obama, but it seems like the whole notion that like the Democratic Party has been going left and left for so long, and that now a lot of things they embrace is not above 200. It seems to me.
Well, I think one of the things that happens is Doc did mention that Republican and Democratic senators and politicians calibrate almost the same. But the Republican ideals calibrate higher because they deal in what is instead of what should be. They're dealing in reality. So that's almost 100 points higher. And I think how Trump got elected, even with his faults, is that people are so sick and tired of the politicians talking a good game, but not actually moving forward with those principles.
Yeah.
And consistently compromising, or not even, saying they're going to do something and then not doing it. And with Trump, as much as it was hard to stomach some of his egoism and such, at least he was doing these things. And that's the thing that's kind of fascinating to me, is there's such a visceral reaction to him, but nobody can really point to what thing he's done that is actually bad, or even that conservative, to be quite honest. Because everything he's done, even till recently, was things that liberals would have agreed with generally. And he's
they would say, how dare you say that he's a racist?
That's so hilarious. Like, he is the number one person cited in rap songs. He was embraced by the Black community. He was given an award next to Rosa Parks and Muhammad Ali for his service to the Black community. Like, he's human. Maybe he has perception of the community because of the high crime, or who knows, maybe there are some perceptions, but in actions he's actually done more directly for the Black community, which I wouldn't even agree with. I don't think it's the way to go. I don't think it's how you lift up a community, is by kind of coddling them and infantilizing them and saying you need help. I think you do it by being honest with them and saying, look, there's these structural problems with single parenthood, there's structural problems with the community. You've given up your basically conservative ideals that you lived as a community, and you used to have a tight-knit community. You used to have two-parent families. You used to be moving for 20 years before the great society and all the welfare programs.
Lyndon Johnson,
yeah, Blacks were moving up faster than any other group.
Yeah, it started all with Lyndon Johnson, unfortunately, and but maybe things are changing. I think Thomas Sowell is very popular, and he's one great mind 480, and his there's a radio guy, Larry Elder. Thomas Sowell has been on his radio show a few times. He's also good. Maybe things will change, but I think we're the culture war is heightening. Like O'Reilly back in 2006, I think he wrote a book called The Culture Warrior, but I think even he couldn't have not predicted how bad things got in just 14 years. It's just incredible.
And I have to admit, this is the downside of Trump, because as much as he was a reaction to the overreach of the left, his extreme aspects kind of upset the left even more and stirred up the left. Force creates counterforce. So there is an aspect of him that is participated in this. As much as I like maybe some of the things he's done,
Right.
He's definitely participated in this.
You know what they say online is they say that that Trump didn't create the hate on the left. He revealed it. I think
He knew the buttons to push.
And the thing about it is that the thing I really like about him is that despite his flaws, he, like most Republicans would have folded with any kind of criticism like that. But Trump just keeps on going. And not only that, he fights back, which sometimes is counterproductive, but he doesn't stop. He doesn't stop. And that's...
Well, I'll give him credit on that in one sense, because if the media is 96... the media reports on him are 96% negative, and that 4% is probably Fox and a couple others.
Yeah.
What else do you do? I mean, I wouldn't do it exactly the way he did it, and you might not do it exactly the way he does it, but you got to do something. You got to fight back. You can't be the wilting lily and just take it.
Yeah, like calling spade a spade is 490, I think. So wow. I love it that in this podcast, we talked a lot about numbers, and people that aren't familiar with the map of consciousness maybe should look it up, pick up the book, maybe Power versus Force. That's a good way to start. Yeah. What would you recommend for people if they wanted, I guess in a way, I'm doing this for people to discover Dr. Hawkins. I think there's plenty of ways people are discovering it. Like the other day, Russell Brand, I don't know if you saw it, but he made this video recommending Letting Go book and how it helped him. So what do you think people should do to get to start peering into the amazing work that it's David Hawkins?
I was really impressed with Russell Brand's assessment of it and his clear-headedness about what he read. Made me think, like, geez, I didn't see it as clearly as he did. I mean, I got a lot from it, but I was impressed by his mind's ability to hold the structure of what he said.
Same.
I mean, it's so different for each person, but I don't think you can go wrong, obviously, with Letting Go. And I don't think generally you can go wrong with Power versus Force, though for some people it might seem a little heady. So if you're a little more in the intellect, then maybe Power versus Force, and if you're a little more not, then Letting Go. And then they're all great books. Discovering the Presence of God. That was a good little story.
Okay.
That's a side note. I met a good friend. I was going to a lecture. Oh, no. I was going to a retreat. I have a friend who was into raw food, and he invited me to this Hawaii retreat. And I was thinking, I'll bring a Hawkins book. And I looked on my bookcase and I decided to bring Discovering the Presence of God. And I wasn't reading it at the time, but it just felt like the book to bring. And then I get to the room, I have a roommate. So I get to the room, I open up the door, sitting on the bed 3 feet away from me, facing me, is Discovering the Presence of God. And he said, yeah, I wasn't reading it either. My intuition told me to bring it.
Wow.
And then another friend I met, that friend who was into raw foods, he's really into Doc. He's an interesting character, and he still is into Doc. And he has a pretty big YouTube channel. He's got like, I think around 400,000 viewers or subscribers.
Subscribers. Wow. That's a lot more than me, by the way.
And I was getting on a plane to go see Doc, and I always wait to the end. And then there's this guy there. He seemed kind of odd. Like he seemed a little bit like a hippie, but he was in a tracksuit, and then he had long hair, but it was kind of wet and everything. He's an odd character. But we started talking, and then after a little bit, he's super friendly. And after a little bit, he said, what are you going to Arizona for? And I said, I'm going to see an author I really like. And then he said, I'm going to this retreat. And then a minute later, he turns to me and goes, David Hawkins? I said, yeah, David Hawkins. And he pulls out his book, Power versus Force.
Wow, that's amazing. Yeah, I do miss his social commentary. I have to admit a lot, and I wonder what he would say about the state of the media in today's world. It's just
He did say a lot about it, in the sense that he said it was likely going to have to come to a head. And I remember one time him being optimistic that it would help, it was still maybe in the process of the fall of Rome, but it wasn't going to happen all at once. And we had to
bump in the road. Yeah.
We had to have some of those bumps to kind of remember to see these extremes that would come up.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, the human aspect, it's funny, when you let it go, it's like everything's just fine. I mean, it's like the story of going up to get beheaded. Are you okay right now? Yeah. You get on the steps. Are you okay right now? Yeah, I'm okay. So when you really step from it, everything's going to be okay. But on a human level, having preferences, yeah, you kind of look at it and go, oh boy, this could be not fun. But in the context of history, like we're pretty damn lucky.
Yeah. I mean, we're talking across the world. I have everything. I have like oranges there. I have tea here. I have, stuff in the fridge. It's amazing.
I know a doc student in Ethiopia right now, and they're in a war, and they're in a war against his people, and he can't access his bank. Yeah. So anyone who watches this, they have extra prayers. That's a good one. Right. Super nice guy. I love him. God.
All right. So let's pray for Ethiopia, and
yeah.
Well, this was an amazing podcast. Thank you very much, Jeremy, for being here.
Yeah, thank you for just talking, because I was thinking, I don't know what I have to say, but just talking about Doc and stuff is always fun.
You had plenty to say. I didn't know you were a monk for years. That's amazing.
And I didn't think it was so amazing at the time.
I think so. And for people watching and listening, thank you very much for listening to this.